So we are talking today about standing out in a crowded market. I have a lot I want to say about that, so I will try to somehow condense it and we'll go through it. But I feel like this is such a topic of conversation, kind of in our space right now. I think especially just like as the space gets bigger. But I think what we forget and what feels really important to say is like, it is super, super, super good for everyone involved in this space if our space continues to grow and get bigger. Like, does it provide more competition? Sure. Does it mean it's like noisier and maybe a little more challenging to stand out? Absolutely. Is that still very, very good for all of us involved to see our industry continuing to grow? Absolutely. You do not want to be in an industry that is not growing, that's not getting noisier and noisier to a certain extent. So I just kind of want to like level set that and be like, let's try to see this as a really positive thing. Because I feel like so often in our brains, that's such like a write-off and such a negative almost, but the truth is it really does help all of our businesses in a big way. Looks like an animal died every time I wash my hair. That's so funny, Michelle. Not TMI, but also funny. But yeah, so it's really good for our businesses. Like it is, the more coaching becomes normalized, the better, right? Like the better it is for all of us because the more mainstream it's going to become. So like if our industry grows with new coaches, it's also going to grow with new clients. And so I just really, really want to challenge us all to keep remembering that too, whenever you're kind of in that mindset of like, oh yeah, it's like feeling so noisy and so crowded. Like, yes, and think about all the ways that that's so beneficial. Like I think about that in terms of like what's happened in the therapy space, over the last, couple decades or so, where it was like so taboo to have a therapist and like wasn't that mainstream or whatever. And now it's like almost weird if you don't have a therapist. I'm kind of kidding, but do you know what I mean? Like we all talk about it so openly and it's like so normalized. And like, yes, that industry has gotten bigger, but maybe in the best possible way. And I think that will happen with coaching too. So just like really important to remember that and see this as like such a positive for your businesses. Of course, there are like adaptations we have to make around that. So we can talk about that. But like, this isn't like, oh my gosh, this is a big problem and now we have to solve it. This is more like amazing. Our space continues to grow, which means if you're in now and it continues to grow, like you still get to be at like kind of like the bottom floor to a certain extent. Do you know what I mean? And then obviously we'll take off from there more and more and more. So just wanted to like say that. Let's just see this as a really positive thing. Yes, love this. I'm in the middle of a launch, noticing more noise than last year. Yeah. And again, like I think that can feel annoying or frustrating when you're like in the middle of a launch, right? But also so positive because in some ways other people are doing marketing for you too, is another way that I think about it, where it's like if everybody's out there talking about like why to have a business coach or something and I'm a business coach, well, fuck, that serves me really well, or whatever kind of coach you are. Like if everybody's starting to normalize having a life coach or a health coach or whatever, perfect. Like that's making it better and better for you because then you don't have to sell people on why they need a coach. You just have to sell them on why you, which is what we can talk about today too. So very positive, very good for our industry that it continues to grow. Very, very, very good for all of us that are in it. So let's be careful not to like make that wrong, right? Oh, I forgot to say this. So our giveaway today is Million Her Bundle. So that is like our biggest and most kind of robust bundle. It has really just like in-depth trainings, worksheets, all the things. I won't spend a ton of time talking about it, but it's our like, biggest like DIY offer basically. And so if you comment today, any comment, you will be entered to win. Love that perspective. Would love to hear you talk about that. Awesome. Perfect. I totally will, Shantae. Michelle said, I'm super excited for more people normalize hiring a coach or support in the fertility space right now. The only coach is therapy, which is great. And so is coaching. Right. So like Michelle, like for you, that's been like actually one of the bigger challenges of your business is that that industry is so small and it's so not normalized, right? And so for you, like it would be great for your business for that market to get noisier in a way because it gets more and more mainstream. So like Michelle is a great example of like why you do want to see your industry continue to grow, why you do want to see that take off, because if not, you're doing harder work sometimes. So like, I never have to sell anyone on why business coaching. That's fucking fantastic for me, right? Like that wipes out this whole kind of like marketing challenge. And I just have to sell people on why me. So anyway, just helpful to see that, I think, because again, it's just so easy to like eye roll the like noise, but it's like, what if this, like all this noise was like very deeply contributing to like your long-term gain and success, right? So the first thing I want to talk about, which seems funny, but is like very relevant, is do you even need to stand out? Right? Like, should this even be your goal? So I just want to like level set with that. Should this even be your goal? Because for a lot of people, you absolutely fucking do not need to have the goal of stand out in a crowded market. Like, you might just have the goal of like get 5 clients or like get 10 clients or whatever. And like, you don't have to stand out in a crowded market to get 10 clients. I mean, truly, that is completely unnecessary. And so what I see happen is a lot of people are trying to like, put the cart before the horse kind of thing, where it's like, I want to, I need to like get online and I need to like grow as fast as possible and stand out as much as possible. And they're putting all this energy into that. Meanwhile, like they haven't even gotten their first like 5 clients, or they haven't even like filled their practice or whatever. And it's like, I get the brain washing kind of this space that makes us do that, but it's really, really not helpful. So like really start there with yourself. Like, do I need to stand out in a crowded market to hit the goals that I want to hit? For the vast majority of us, the answer is going to be no, right? Yeah. Oh my God, hurts my soul and brain, but so true. I love you. Lindsay said, yes, once I realized that I needed to teach my people what coaching is, it was a game changer. If I didn't need to do this, I could just focus on more specifics. Exactly, Linz, right? So like, really helpful to like know, like, am I in an industry where like, I don't even have to talk about that because it's so normalized because it's crowded? Cool. Like the industry just solved one of my problems, but okay, so do I actually even need to stand out in a crowded market? Like, why would I need to do that? Well, I'd probably only need to do that if I was like really at a point of scaling to, big numbers, right? Like, and quite frankly, I make, 7 figures in the business and I don't need to stand out in a crowded market. It's completely unnecessary for my business success. So I personally don't create a lot of content that I believe would like really take off or be viral or stand out because it's completely not necessary for the business model that we have. If and when that ever changes, like I would change my content strategy, but like for right now, I make almost no content with the intent of like, how do we get this to like go viral or really stand out or really create like massive growth, because it's just completely unnecessary for what we're doing, right? Lisa said, so true. You can have your smaller audience filled with your kind of people and have that be 100% enough to be fully booked. Exactly. Right. And then you're spending time on the right stuff, right? So for me, I want to spend time on the stuff that feels more important to me, which is like giving value and conversions. Like I'd much rather feel really, really strong in our ability to convert our wait lists and things like that than I would feel like in our ability to like add 1,000 followers on Instagram. Like I literally don't care. So just like really check in with yourself around that. Like, to get what you want is standing out in a crowded market, the actual thing that has to happen to get you there. Lindsay said, I don't need to stand out, but I do need my audience to know me. Right. Totally. And I think those can be different things, which we can talk about in a second. I think that can be true with digital products. Even you don't have to have viral content. That's sometimes the opposite of helpful. Yes, we are going to talk about that. Yes, this is more about connection than it is about growth. Right. So what Lindsay said is I don't need to stand out, but I do need my audience to know me. Right. So that's when it's like, you don't feel all this pressure to stand out. Like you just feel all this emphasis on like, how can I like really be, myself and like connect with my audience in that way. And that's kind of the best place to be, truthfully, because you're not doing things for the sake of standing out. Like, I think so often, like when we're doing things for the sake of standing out, it doesn't always translate as well as we want it to. And like, there is a time and place for this, certainly. And like, let's talk about that. But, yeah, it's not always a thing and doesn't always need to be the intent. So check in with yourself on that. Like, is this necessary, or am I like playing a game I don't even need to play? Most people need to be conversion focused as their goal. So like Lindsay said, it's her way of being conversion focused is like getting her audience to know them. Yeah, Michelle said it's more about connection than it is about growth. Elisa, I think you said something, but then it disappeared for me. I don't know what happened there. I don't know if I accidentally hit see thread or something, but yeah, I don't know. Let me know. It's me, I'm conversion focused. Exactly, right? And so it doesn't make sense to stand out in a crowded market if you don't already know you're getting great conversions for the thing you're already doing and you aren't already ready to scale that. So just like level set, let's keep that in mind. Let's make sure you're solving the right problem in your business, because you could spend all day long trying to stand out in a crowded market, right? Without ever seeing the sales from that. Which leads me to my second point, which is there's a difference between viral content and conversions, which was what Jess was saying earlier. Some of my clients, we really do focus on having more of the viral content, and it works really well because they're at a stage in business where that makes sense. Like, for example, one client I'm thinking of, like, she has a very, very scaled course. We run ads to it. It, is really a numbers game at that point, right? Like, she knows the coursework. She has a really strong funnel. She has really good conversions. And so all we're trying to do is like continue to fill the pipeline of more course buyers. So of course it makes sense for her to stand out in a crowded market. Of course it makes sense for us to create more viral content to get more eyes on that. But like, that is at such a specific point in her business where that focus started making sense, right? Elisa said, I'm currently teaching a program around reels, and the whole idea is that you don't want to go viral because you're not an influencer, but it's much more about conversions instead of those insane metrics. The online space can get so in our head about what's important. Absolutely. Such a good focus. I love it. But right, like, you can do a shit ton of reels and get views, but is it going to get you sales, right? And in some cases, if you have an incredibly well-honed process already, yes, it actually might get you sales. Like this client that I used as the example earlier, we've worked for a long time of getting her process like absolutely solid. And so when more people find her, it typically does lead to more sales. So she's at a point in business where it makes sense to put her time towards that. But that is much more recent, and it has not made sense for the many years before that, right? Michelle's most viral reel is of Delphi swaddled making cute sounds, right? Yeah, a lot of people hate swaddling. Oh, interesting. But yeah, like, that's the thing when something goes viral, and not only it's because it's like controversial content a lot of the time, right? It's because you get as much hate as you do love. And like, I think that most people are kind of freaked out by that. And again, like, you have to be at a space in your business where like, one, you feel like you can handle that and you have the mindset and like the foundation to really handle that, because that's also true. Like, sometimes when you're standing out in a crowded market, what it really means is you're pissing people off as much as you're exciting them, which is great. I mean, I think we should all be doing that in our content and our marketing to a certain extent, but it's kind of on a next level. And so, if you're trying to do that in business before you've even gotten like your first set of clients and feel really confident in like your work and your offer and all of that, it is going to mind fuck you so hard, right? Like, dealing with all of that. Like, Michelle makes a video of her freaking baby making cute noises in a swaddle, and that's what happens when it blows up. So like, just really helpful to remember some of these things too, where it feels like that would be like the ultimate, but like, there are plenty of trade-offs that come with that too. And you kind of have to be at the right place to make that like, worth receiving. So yeah, like what I think we get confused on sometimes is that we think views are the only thing. And we think like standing out to get enough views is the only thing. But the truth is that really only goes far if you already have like a really strong back end and conversion process where you know that views almost always lead to more sales. If you don't for sure know that in your business right now, you do not need to stand out in a crowded market. You need to figure out how to convert. Hands down, that's it. Does that make sense? So just context there, because I think that it's so easy to like see a live stream title like this and jump on and be like, yes. How do I stand out in a crowded market? And I just like never want to be the person being like, here's how you do it. But like without being like, but are you sure you need to? And are you sure you want to? And are you sure that makes sense? Cool. So if you did, here are some specific things that work. And the reason I want to share some of these things is because I feel like it seems so mysterious sometimes. And for me, I'm like, oh, this is so simple. But not, always like the easiest to see the simplicity. Live over, thank you and good night. Yeah, I feel like I should just be like, that's it. That was the whole live. Like you don't actually like bait and switch. How to stand out in a crowded market. Don't buy. But really kind of don't buy. So here are some ways that we'll kind of walk through. So let's just break it down into being really simple. Like use expertise, share your lifestyle, give value. Those are like the three main things that we see in our online space, right? And listen, like almost everyone does somewhat of a combination of all of these, but there's usually much heavier emphasis on one over the other. And so I want to talk through what those are and also help you figure out which of these might work best for you, but also just like note too, this is how marketing in our industry works. And this is how sometimes we get sucked in, because marketing and what we're going to talk about in terms of standing out is very different than like what it looks like to deliver that service, which is a whole other conversation. But like, I think sometimes because someone has like good marketing or they're good at creating viral content or standing out, we like automatically assume there's a secret and that they're going to be like this amazing coach and support system. And it's not usually that. It's like they're usually using a pretty basic one of these things and they're just doing it really well. And so again, it doesn't mean they're not going to be a great coach, but it also doesn't necessarily translate to the fact that they will be. So just like keep that in mind too. But okay, so like give value is really obvious, but like what works for that is a lot of times when you have like very, very basic content. And I don't mean basic in a bad way. I mean basic in a good way, where it's like someone can like scroll through a thing, get something out of it in a minute and feel like they just got a lot of value, from it. Right. And from you. And what obviously works about that is like, if people get value from something quick like that, they're typically wanting to come back to you for more. So I always say, like, if someone can get a result before they paid you a dime, it makes them want to pay you, kind of thing, right? I think that this works, but what a lot of people don't do super well with value content is they make it too high level and it doesn't feel like we're just giving people a quick win, right? Michelle said I have the opposite problem. I'm a great coach with a marketing problem that I'm actively working on. Yeah, totally. I think a lot of people feel that way. And I think it's like normal. I think that's more than norm, honestly, than like I'm great at marketing and I'm a shitty coach. But I think obviously that I'm great at marketing and I'm not a great coach, it just blows up more. You know what I mean? Lindsay said me too. Yes, had that experience. Wow effect in marketing, not so wow effect coaching behind the scenes. That's a real turnoff. Yeah, because they're just totally different skill sets, right? And I think there's overlap in many ways, but yes, totally. So, the thing most people do wrong, again, with value content is that it's not just like quick, easily digestible, quick win kind of thing. And it's not always meeting their audience where they're at. It's like, Michelle, I'll use you as an example, right? But like Michelle and I have talked about, like, sometimes she'll write content that's like very high level, almost like introspective about kind of like the process of the infertility journey, where a lot of her clients are just like, what are like the 3 things I need to remember for transfer day or something like that, right? And so creating value content that kind of meets them there where they're at versus like asks them to like kind of go high level with you sometimes is really, really helpful for getting that standout moment, right? Now, I definitely give a lot of value, but I certainly don't always create content like that, but I'm not looking for that standout moment. If I was, I would probably change my content strategy, to be perfectly honest with you. A lot of experts are so smart that they give value and people are like, huh, exactly, Jess, 100%. Okay, we both know how I like to overcomplicate things. Can we give an example of quick ones? Yes, perfect, Michelle. I just used you as an example. Same page. Right. But do you see how like that would be different in terms of like what stood out to someone potentially if they're like scrolling really quickly or whatever? 3 things I need to know for transfer day. So simple. And also ask me last time I wrote something like this. Right. So again, it's like not like you have to. Again, like you don't necessarily need this huge moment of like stand out in a crowded market, but it's just good to see like, oh, if I wanted to, that's what I could do. Right. Like I did something recently, like a post, and I think the post, like my team made it a carousel, right? And good for them because it was smart. But it was like, I don't know, things I talked with my 7-figure clients about this week, right? And it was like scrollable. And it did like better than a lot of our posts do because like ultimately that's a curiosity point of a lot of people. And so it's going to stand out that 1, I have 7-figure clients, and 2, I'm going to tell you what I talked to them about this week. And it's like, tell me. But if I'm like writing a post that's like, I don't know, like, I'm just making something like, let's use this. Like, you don't actually need to stand out in a crowded market. What you need to focus on is more about conversions. Like, unless I said that in a super punchy, like in your face kind of way, like that probably wouldn't be the most standout content, even though I feel like it's super value-based and helpful to get across. So like neither is wrong, but it's just like knowing your intent and not seeing it as like a secret of like why things blow up and why things don't. It's like, it's pretty obvious. And so you just have to decide what makes the most sense for you. And like, do you want to go in that direction kind of thing? Lacey saw that post. Yeah, perfect. Right. Right. And we make it so hard, like Michelle's saying, right? So I think that that's just a really helpful thing to see, like, yes, give value, but there are typically specific ways of giving that really help things stand out. And like, you can play that game or not play that game. Again, it depends on like the whole conversation we had at the beginning of like where you're at in your business and what makes sense. But just know that like, if you tend to overcomplicate value a little bit, or if you get a little more deeper existential or whatever, like many of us do, and I do all the time, right? That might just not be your most standout content, but it might be your converting content. So for me, I don't know that like what I talked to my 7-figure clients about this week post is necessarily going to be my highest converter, but it might like get more eyes on something. But I think like another one where I'm like talking way more deeply about like the mindset and things like that. Yeah, it might not get a lot of traction. It probably won't, but it's often the thing that like I personally get reached out to about, or that when someone like wants to hire me, it's because of something like that. So just know that there's always a balance, and like knowing what's really important to you in any given season in your business is really the thing there. Michelle's the problem. Right. But again, like you have to know what's important for you in your season. Like, that might not have to be the most important thing, but I think again, it's just a good example. Right. And so know that like that is a way to stand out with value content, but there are some specifics around it that are going to make a bigger difference. And like usually it's when you can make it very, very simple. And it's when you can get in your audience's head where they're at, not like where you're at or where you want them to be or what you would talk about in coaching. It's like where they're at, what would make them like stop the scroll kind of thing, right? Again, it's like for Michelle, it might be like 3 things you need to know for transfer day makes me stop versus like, like some higher level thing. Like I even think about that with like, Bennett has been having some sleep challenges. And like what makes me stop when like Instagram like is obviously targeting me because it knows is like something like 2 things to do tonight to help your baby sleep better or whatever. Like that's probably basic ass content for the person writing it. But for me, like in that moment, that's what's going to make me stop and then maybe like follow that person or look more into it or whatever. Right. It's not like anything more complicated than that. So just like keep that in mind for value. So the other one is sharing lifestyle. So I feel like this is the more I don't know, controversial one in a sense. But at the end of the day, like that really does work super well in our space. Like a lot of people make a lot of sales because they're basically like, look at me doing these things that you want to do, right? I've heard it described as like identity affirmation, right? One of her clients is a sleep consultant. I'm sure her reels have bumped up for me, Lisa. I would imagine that they definitely have. But yeah, like sharing the lifestyle. So this is, again, I think it's like more controversial in a way because it's sort of like, what are we selling? Where is the line there? That kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it works. We're talking about purely what works. And like a lot of times selling the lifestyle, affirming that identity that people want really does work. So it's like the person who you see like traveling all the time and sharing that, or sharing a lot more of like things they've purchased or things they're doing, or like how amazing their life is because of the thing they're selling for you, right? Identity affirmation for multiple audience trips. Yeah, totally. Yes. I mean, listen, I think at the end of the day, though, like it's really about what identity are you embodying, right? Lindsay, right? I'm having a call today with a sleep consultant who I found during a late night scroll. Right. That's what it is, right? And it probably wasn't anything like crazy or revolutionary. It was probably like something very, very, very basic that you were like, need that. Who are you? How do I get help? Right. So yes, that is how that works. But yeah, with lifestyle, I think that, so let's just like use these two as different things. Like with value content, it's more like I'm trying to think about like, what value can I give to my audience to help them get a result before they hire me? With lifestyle content, it's like really not that at all. It's more like, how can I really show them the epitome of like what this could look like so that they hire me because they want that, right? And again, right, wrong, or indifferent, it does work really well in our space because in many ways we're promising people not promising, we're promoting a certain result. And so being able to showcase having that result ourselves can and does often make people a lot of sales, right? Some people are more or less comfortable with this than other people, and some people lean on it more heavily than others. But honestly, some of the like biggest coaches in our space rely almost entirely on sharing lifestyle, and like maybe there's a small portion of value in it, but at the end of the day, like they're mostly making a lot of standout content because they're sharing their lifestyle. And so like that's just one relevant to think about from the marketing consumption point. Like, are you buying their lifestyle, or are you buying what kind of coach they're going to be? But also from your standpoint is like, do you want to market like that? Like I have a few clients that market almost entirely lifestyle and they love it and it fits them so well and it works so well for them and like is really kind of their secret sauce. And so there's nothing wrong with either, but I think it's just like noting like, oh yeah, like that is just a strategy, honestly. Do you know what I mean? Like it is literally just a strategy. Like someone's not necessarily even thinking just like, oh, I'm going to go on this trip and I'll share it. It's like, I'm launching, so I'm going to go on this trip. Like it's literally that strategic, right? It's not just like, oh, we happen to be here and like, I might as well share some stuff. It's like literally like I'm planning a lot of my marketing and launch calendar around, or I'm planning a lot of my trips and stuff like that around my launch and marketing calendar because like I know that's what will sell, you know? So like just keeping that in mind. When I started posting what I was going through with our deployment, everything has gone up, engagement, followers, etc. Perfect, Lindsay. Exactly. And that's like a different version of lifestyle content, right? But it's like exactly that. Like they're more connecting with you over like maybe how well you're navigating it or the fact that you're in it too. Same for Michelle, right? But that like common identity or that affirming that identity is such a connection point, right? It's like how we are as humans. So again, like I think it's great. It's like having a really, really strong personal component to your brand is super useful. Obviously, there are like different lines that we all have with that, right? But that's how it goes, right? Yes. When I shared my big overseas trip, my engagement has gone up so much, 100%. I'm finally going to launch a couple of offerings outside of one-on-one consulting. And this is very timely as I've been going on a shame spiral about how to do marketing since I do zero. At least the rumor about TikTok potentially getting removed from the App Store is taking that off my plate. I needed this conversation today. Thank you. You're so welcome. Totally. I hope this just like demystifies it, because like, I think what you're saying is like going down that like shame spiral about it and feeling like, oh my God, I wouldn't know how to do this. But it's like, it's actually all super fucking basic. Like give really basic value, share your lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. Maybe do a combination of both, but most people lean pretty hard into one or the other. And like, ultimately, that's the stuff that works. How do you then convert through that? I feel like that's essential. Well, I think it's really about tying your offer to why you have that lifestyle, right? So it's like if I'm sharing like the trips and the things or whatever, I'm saying like, and this thing that I have is what will get you that, right? So it's like making the connection between why I have this lifestyle and then how the product I have leads you to that, right? So like there are obviously a lot of different ways to do that, but I think like again, if you look at a lot of people in our industry right now that are quite big, like that's what they're doing. Like they're more like concerned with showing you like their travel or their purchases or whatever, and then tying that to like, and I'm able to do this because of this thing, go purchase this here, kind of, right? So like that component is obviously really important and useful. And again, like there's nothing wrong with that as long as that feels true and in integrity, right? I think like there's obviously this whole other side of our industry where it's like I'm renting a car or like renting a plane, like I don't know, like I saw this thing, not that I don't think anyone in our industry does this, but I saw this article about influencers renting like fake sets of private planes and like taking pictures on it. Like that's obviously a whole other fucking thing. You can take any of this too far, right? You can do any of this without integrity, but ultimately, like you get what I'm saying, that it's like I have this because of this thing. And like, if you get this thing, like you can start taking steps toward having this too, right? I'm so over TikTok, the viral strategy there is so often to talk total BS. There are studies that showed how many infos are untrue, and I just can't with that. Yeah, totally. Listen, I think it's obviously like anything, there are good sides and there are bad sides. But yeah, I think that like what's helpful to see is like what you're saying, Elisa, and what I think we want to say today is like viral isn't always better and viral doesn't always mean sales. And sometimes it just means shit. You know what I mean? And so like being willing to kind of like see that for what it is, I think is so important. And just like same thing with being willing to see like the value content for what it is. It's not always about like sharing the deepest thing that you could possibly share. Sometimes it's about just like creating the quick win or with the lifestyle. Sometimes it's not always about just like, sharing your trip. Sometimes it's about like strategically doing that around the launch or whatever, right? And again, I think it's like we can have a million conversations on like which is like better, worse, right, wrong. But at the end of the day, like that's just a strategy you can see. And honestly, it's a strategy that's working for a lot of people. And so you just have to weigh if that fits for you or not, right? And then I think you also, again, like to my point earlier, have to weigh if that also translates to the kind of support that you want to get if you do purchase from them, but yeah, like I think obviously much of it is a combination of both. Like some people, of course, give value in share lifestyle or whatever, but I think for the most part, picking one to lean into hard and then kind of doing the other whenever you feel like it is a little bit more helpful. Like, a lot of people will lean very hard into lifestyle, and then here and there, as it relates to maybe a launch or something, they'll drop some value. Or maybe the opposite, you know what I mean? Like they're mostly doing value, and here and there we'll get a sneak peek of lifestyle, but kind of know your thing and lean in, right? We can see day in the life TikToks, how much people love that lifestyle content, right? I feel like that's like what people are obsessed with about TikTok, is more of the almost like less curated version, right? And more like lifestyle, but like real behind the scenes lifestyle kind of stuff. So yeah, like I at the end of the day, that content just works really well. And again, I think you get to decide, like, I know for me, here's an example, like, I know that content works really, really well. I think I've talked about this on here recently too, but like, it just doesn't feel that great to me personally right now. Maybe it will at some time, maybe it won't, but like, I've just chosen not to really do any lifestyle marketing. And like, that's just what fits me in my life right now. That may or may not ever change, but like the thing that's helpful though is it doesn't feel like a fucking mystery to me. Like, I'm not like, oh my God, how could I get more eyes on all my stuff? I'm like, well, I know exactly how I could get more eyes on all my stuff. I just don't know if I feel like it. Or better said, I know how to get more eyes on all my stuff. It's just not that important for my business right now. And so I'm not going to like stretch myself in that way if it doesn't actually feel like it would give like a really important return. So it's just like having that context and remembering it, like, you know, not making yourself wrong for it. Like, I never make myself feel bad or wrong about like, oh my God, like, should I have higher story views? I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Like, I know how I can get more if I want them, but like right now that doesn't feel like the thing for me. And so just again, remembering that for you, if you're like, all I need to focus on is conversions, then I don't have to do any of that shit if I don't want to, or I get to, and it's fun and I get to love it and enjoy it. Like, neither is wrong, but like, keep that context and keep that simplicity, right? The last thing I would say, which is sort of tangential to value, but I do think it's worth sharing it as something separate, which is more like use your expertise. So I think value is more like, I'm just giving you value for you, right? Like, go do this thing, get a result. I think expertise is a little bit more like positioning yourself as like a total expert on something. Like, maybe you're using a credential or a degree or a certification or something like that, but you're really like going with that expert edge, which of course will give some value, but it's a lot more about like client results and testimonials and credentials and maybe even your own results, but it's like much more painting yourself as the expert. So it might be like, you know, like, I'm just making this up to kind of create contrast with, so this is not going to be a perfect example, but it might be the difference between like 4 ways to get clients would be like maybe value content or like stop the scroll thing versus like 4 things I did to create a 7-figure business. Like, does that make sense? So it's like, similar, but like the expertise piece is just so much heavier on one than the other. And it's more about like you as like the vision of that brand versus like the value you're giving. Right? Does that make sense what I'm saying there? So like that expertise content is also, I think, a really big thing that can help you stand out and go viral, especially I think in our space where, you know, there aren't always a ton of like certifications or credentials or things like that, which is not necessarily bad. I'm not saying that is a bad thing, but like that kind of stuff can make you stand out. And then obviously your own results and your client stuff can really make you stand out too. For me, I still always lean a little bit more towards value. I think I do some expertise stuff. I would say that's like my second. Lifestyle is like my never, pretty much. Sometimes I'll share a picture of Bennett, right? But yeah, like side note, like this is so funny, right? But like we are like closing on like our like dream house in a couple days. Well, knock on wood, in a couple days. And I like haven't really shared that because that's just like not a thing for me, but I like have this exciting stuff going on, but it's not really a thing. Like, I'm way more likely to be like, oh, I'm going to share like this piece of value. And then sometimes I'll share like this kind of more like expertise thing. But again, like our goal isn't necessarily to like stand out in a crowded market. So that's not necessarily, I'm not like a good standard to follow here, but just wanted to like use that as an example because obviously it's easier to use myself. Thanks, guys. Thanks. I'm really excited. Hey, Mira. I think the message we often forget that more is not always more. Oh my God, spot on. More is definitely not always more. So thank you. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. I'm really excited. So like, just really helpful to see like, okay, that's, I'm going to force you to do lifestyle. I will send you pictures. But it is really cool. But like, that's the difference there. And I do think that that's like quite enough different than just value content that it's worth kind of like separating that out. But like those three buckets, I think are really, really important. And like, then again, you can kind of see, like, you can just watch people like go, on like social media tonight, wherever you scroll, and be like, oh, I can literally see these three things. They're either doing lifestyle, they're giving value, or they're like really doing more of like the expert positioning. And like, again, they'll probably always be somewhat of a combination, but usually we're leaning much heavier into one versus the other. And then just let it feel demystified. And then you get to decide, do I want to do any of those? Do I need to do any of those? What's my current goal for my business right now? And do these make the most sense, right? Feel so much aligned, sharing value, expertise, and results. It's just for focus on them than me. Totally. Oh, good. I'm so glad it's permission giving. Thank you, Shante. So yeah, no mystery here. This is pretty much how you do it. And like, again, you can go look at people you look up to and probably see how they're doing it. Like, oh, they really stand out because they just give a shit ton of value and people really gravitate towards that. Like, I think that would be like, I haven't followed her in a really long time, but like, if I had to like conceptualize someone in our business, I think that would be maybe like the Amy Porterfield or something like that. I don't really know if she shares lifestyle. I kind of think she doesn't, but again, it's been a while. But like, hers was just about like the value, the kind of stuff like that. Lifestyle would be more of like the influencer or the coaches that you see almost being more like influencers, where they're sharing like where they go or what they're wearing or what trip they're taking or what hotel they're at or whatever. Expertise would be more like, I'm trying to think of who would be a good example of that. Like, I can't even think of someone. But like maybe they have like a certain degree, a certain set of client results, and they're just constantly talking about that, right? Like, these are just some examples, but like, just like help yourself pick that out, right? I really want to do that, but my outfits aren't cute enough. But also like, maybe that's what people would love about your lifestyle content, is that you have very like normal, accessible outfits. So there you go, right? Yes, Marie shares lifestyle so well. I think she does a freaking fantastic job. She's at Marie World on Instagram, right? Fantastic job of sharing lifestyle. Amy was the first person I purchased a course from. Fun fact. Yes, exactly. You're a great example of that. You just position your clients as the experts, especially with your client list of the day, how I personally see it. Oh, thanks, Shante. Perfect. Yeah. So I think that like, that probably is a good example of like, I'm the expert in positioning in terms of like, here's what I'm talking to clients about. Here's this kind of thing. I know a lot of people resonate with the fact that I have like a master's in mental health counseling and an MBA. So it's like some of that expert positioning, right? The unstylish influencer is so funny. I don't think you're unstylish. I just think you're like, probably meaning that like, it's not like you're like, oh, I put together like an outfit with heels today, right? But yeah, I'm like, I wore a black shirt again for the 5th time in a row. That would be mine. Maybe I should have a lifestyle content all about how to wear black. Oh, thank you, Shante. It's perfect, right? But that's such a good example. So like, these are the things. It is not necessarily a mystery. You get to decide which of these make the most sense for you and your brand. And you also get to decide if you even need to stand out in a crowded market. But let's just stop feeling like it is totally beyond our capacity or like not available to us. Like, for some people, maybe the lifestyle thing doesn't feel super accessible at this moment in their business. Fine. Value is always accessible, right? Or maybe like the expertise thing feels less accessible, but you have a great lifestyle that you want to share. Like, whatever, right? Like, none of these are going to fit, or not all of these will fit everyone, but just wanted to kind of be like, this is kind of how simple it can be and kind of what it looks like. And you get to pick what that is for you. So I hope this is helpful. If you guys have questions, obviously let me know, but it's not a mystery. We can all do this. You just get to choose if you want to, and if the benefits are there for you. And if not, you get to do whatever the fuck you want. So there you go. that is our lesson for today. So I hope that you guys have a beautiful Monday. I hope that you have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you guys next week. All right. Bye, y'all.